Hey everybody, do you remember these paints? Well, today we're going to compare them to these, and in some cases also these. Hey everyone, so I'm back today and I'm going to do a little bit of a product comparison. So I'm not an expert on the various stages of Games Workshop or Citadel paint over time, but I have a bunch of paint that I believe is the original formula, although not in the very earliest containers, but these were the screw cap sort of hexagon containers that I believe I purchased in about 2000 to 2002. Now, I have never thrown these out for some reason, and they were completely dried out, like solid, not an ounce of moisture, or a drop of moisture, I should say. And what I thought it would be neat is, I am looking at doing some old hammer painting, so I picked up the Fantasy range of Coat d'Arms paints. And I picked them up just to let you know, like, you can get them from the original distributor, or the actual distributor. I think it's Black Hat Miniatures. I'll correct that with sort of and put the link in the description, but I got them from Scale Creep Miniatures, which is the distributor for North America, and that's Mark Severn is who I purchased it from. And so I'll put Scale Creep Miniatures link below as well, where I purchased them from. But what I'm going to do is just compare primarily these, which I've rehydrated as best as I could, at least to be able to get paint out and fluid. And I used just some water with the Liquitex Flow Aid, which as they describe in the bottle, that's what I often use to thin paints. And so it's just a small percentage of Flow Aid with just plain water. And I used a toothpick and just worked the pigmentation to the point where I can get it out and actually paint with it. Now, a lot of it is still dry, but I just have areas of it that I can paint with now. So I'm going to do a comparison comparing the 2000 sort of formula that was used at that time to primarily the Coat d'Arms version of that paint, and as well, in some cases, what is considered to be the GW equivalent today. Or the latest version I have in between. I'll give you an example. I have a Goblin Green, which I don't believe they make anymore, that is also called Goblin Green, but so it's not like purchasable at the store today, but it's fairly recent history. And I have the Coat d'Arms Goblin Green, and then I have the original GW formula Goblin Green. Now, just to go over real quick which ones I have today, I have Sunburst Yellow, I have Blood Red, these are the original names, not the Coat d'Arms ones, Enchanted Blue, Elf Flesh, Chainmail, the Goblin Green, and then this one is Bestial Brown. So what I'll do is I'll come back and I will do some close-ups and show the paints for each one of these, and we'll see how they look. Hey everybody, so I am back with the results. I'm going to show you what I came up with here, and I'm actually going to start from the bottom because I had a little bit of trouble, which I'll talk about with the yellow, and I'm going to do that one last. So I'm going to zoom in here. So here we have the old Hex Bottle 2000 GW Brown, and it's the Bestial Brown. Here we have the Coat d'Arms Hairy Brown, which is meant to match it. And then we have the Mournfang Brown, which is supposed to have been the replacement by GW. Now these ones actually look all fairly different. On this particular one, I do think that these two are the closest. So the one that is meant to mimic the old GW Bestial Brown, the Hairy Brown, is likely the closest, although I see a little bit of a reddish hue in it, you know, versus this one, and then even more so, an even deeper brown with a reddish hue for the Mournfang than this one. So in that case, that's sort of my eye. I do think that there's a difference. They don't exactly match to my eye. Then next we have Goblin Green. So we have the old GW 2000, the coat d'arms, and that's also Goblin Green. And then we have a more currently released, although unavailable now, Goblin Green. Now on this one, I really find that the GW ones, both the one that just sort of became not available and fairly recently, and the really old one, actually match pretty well. And then I find that the coat d'arms is a little bit darker. Now, I am doing this on paper, and in some cases I did find some of them for particular colors bled through, were a little more watery than, you know, the other ones. And now, I found even though I rehydrated these, I mean, they were kind of thicker, probably because of that. But in any case, I do feel that it's a darker pigmentation on the coat d'arms in comparison. Next one we don't have for these two comparisons for recent GWs, but I do have the Chainmail from the old GW, and then I have the coat d'arms. I do notice that the coat d'arms, you know, depending on the way you hold the paper and the reflection, they look really close. But as you can probably see here, the coat d'arms one does look a little bit darker. But having said that, I was rehydrating a metallic, and so that's a little dicey even with the way I rehydrated it. They're so close that I do almost wonder whether if I rehydrated it more or if it was newer that it would actually look richer like this one does anyway. And so I find them very close. I do think it's a really nice substitute, in my opinion, for this one. Now, next we actually have the Elf Flesh. The Elf Flesh, admittedly, I did paint this over twice because this one that I rehydrated was fairly light and bleeding through the paper, so I did go over with a second coat. But having said that, the tone of the Elf Flesh is a little bit lighter, in my opinion, even just looking at the jar, than the coat d'arms, which is a little bit darker. But still, you know, of that flesh tone. You know, it's definitely a flesh tone, but it seems a little bit darker to me. Here I have, again, the Hexagon Enchanted Blue. I have the Wizard Blue by Coat d'Arms, and I have the Enchanted Blue that was more recently retired, like the Goblin Green. And I find the two Enchanted Blues, the GWs, look really similar to me. I actually think this is a really good substitute now that there isn't one of these available for this color, although I do find that the coat d'arms is just slightly darker. It seems to be a bit of a trend. It's a little richer, just a little bit darker to me. Next I have the Blood Red, and I have the Hexagon GW, and I have the coat d'arms, and it's called also Blood Red. So it is meant to be an exact match. I find these two really close, like extremely good, with the coat d'arms and the old Hexagon GW in particular. And so I really liked that match on that one. Lastly, this was the one that I did first. I found that I made a number of mistakes when trying to put out the coat d'arms. It came out very watery, and I wasn't sure if I shook it up enough because these are all new jars for the coat d'arms. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up like canceling this, you know, and I did it to the right and above. So I have the Hexagon GW right here, and then I have a GW, and it's actually not the coat d'arms, it's, or I should say, it's the flash gets yellow. It's one that you can still get today, so it's not one that's retired. It's one you can get today. So I have those two, and then I have the coat d'arms, like a bigger sort of one here. But that I also did it because I was getting really far from my GW palette. I did it right here as well, just so I could show it in the screen. Now, I'll be honest, initially I really thought that the coat d'arms one was darker and just not comparable. But when I actually put multiple coats on it, because it came out kind of thin and it is a new bottle like I said, I did find it matched pretty well here. I'm not sure what you guys think. But I also felt that right out of the bottle, the Flash Gets Yellow you can get today is really close to the old GW one, in my opinion. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed that little comparison. See you next time, everybody.